Welcome back to our Nomad Capitalist Research and Development channel. I'm your host, Natalia Rincon, Research and Development Associate at Nomad Capitalist. And today we are putting two very popular Caribbean citizenship by investment countries against each other. These are St. Kitts and Nevis and Antigua and Barbuda. How do they compare? How are they similar? And how are they different? Ultimately, which one is the best option for you if you want to get citizenship by investment in a Caribbean country? That's what we're going to find out today. So let's start off with passport strengths. One of the main reasons why our clients here at Nomad Capitalist often choose to invest in a citizenship by investment program in a Caribbean island is because of the freedom of travel that the passport provides. And of course, it is a great plan B option if anything in your home country goes astray. But here is how St. Kitts and Nevis and Antigua and Barbuda's passport compare. Antigua and Barbuda's passport gives you visa-free access to 153 countries, whereas St. Kitts and Nevis' passport gives you visa-free access to 154 countries. Both of these passports give you visa-free access to countries like Russia, the Schengen area, and the UK. If you want to talk about some notable differences, maybe we can mention that St. Kitts and Nevis' passport gives you visa-free access to countries like Argentina and Uruguay. But for the most part, they're pretty comparable when it comes to freedom of travel. Now let's move on to passport validity. These passports are issued with a validity period. You would think that they're issued for a lifetime, but this is not the case. Now, if you choose to go for a St. Kitts and Nevis passport, this will be issued for a validity of a total of 10 years. Now, if you wish to renew this passport, I have great news for you because you do not need to visit the country in order to be eligible to renew it for another 10 years. This isn't the case with Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda's passport, on the other hand, is issued for only 5 years. And if you wish to renew it, you need to visit the country for at least 5 days within the validity period of the passport. So this is something to keep in mind. And you need to plan ahead in order to get some nice vacations to Antigua and Barbuda. So moving on, we are going to compare what options you have to invest in order to qualify for citizenship by investment. So first off, we need to start with the most common one, which is the donation option. Both countries have a donation option, but how do they compare? So let's start off with St. Kitts and Nevis. If you wish to donate to the Sustainable Island State Contribution, the minimum threshold that you need to take into consideration is $250,000 for a single applicant or a family up to 4 members. This is usually your spouse and 2 children. If you want to add an additional dependent, the amount will vary between the age of the dependent. If the dependent is below 18 years old, you will have to contribute $25,000 per applicant. If the dependent is above 18 years old, then this amount would raise to $50,000 per additional dependent. So whether you're a single applicant or you are applying with your family, you should budget in at least $250,000. Now let's compare that to Antigua and Barbuda. Their donation is to the National Development Fund. And this is much more straightforward. If you're a single applicant or you're applying with a family up to 4 members, you would donate $230,000. If your family is above 4 members, so 5 members forward, you would still donate a fixed amount of $245,000 in order to qualify. But that's not all. If you want to donate to Antigua and Barbuda and you have a family of 6 members or more, there's another donation option that you can consider, and it can be much more beneficial than the one I mentioned previously. And it is a donation to the University of the West Indies. If your family is of 6 members or more, you can donate a fixed amount of $260,000 inclusive of processing fees. Now, why am I being so emphatic in the amount of family members? Because this option is only available for families of 6 members or more. If your family has less members, then this option would not apply to you. Now let's go through option 2, and this is the real estate investment. Now, this option has been a little bit controversial throughout the years because the property that you can choose from has to be pre-approved, and this is all the time. However, there have been some recent developments that might make real estate investment attractive to those of you who are a little bit riskier in terms of investing. Now, if you want to go for St. Kitts and Nevis, there are 2 investment thresholds that you can take a look into. If you want to go for the lower investment, you can invest $400,000 in a condominium or in an approved real estate development project. Now, usually these development projects are more directed towards tourism initiatives such as hotels, but you can buy either a share or a unit. Now, if you want to go for the higher investment, you can invest a minimum of 800,000 US dollars in a single private family dwelling home. There are a lot of different requirements when it comes to actually picking the property, and the process can be thorough. But ultimately, what you need to know is that you cannot rent it, and you have to wait 7 years after the real estate title is issued or your citizenship certificate is issued before you can sell it to another approved citizenship by investment applicant. Now, in order to sell it, it needs to be approved by federal cabinet to be resellable. In order to get this approval, you need to invest a significant amount into improving, renovating, or adding further construction into the property so that the value is maintained or even increased. Now, in terms of ownership options, in St. Kitts and Nevis, you can own these properties or real estate either under your personal name through a certificate of title or through a company. You can own shares or the company can hold the real estate. If you decide to own the real estate through a company, the company needs to be incorporated in St. Kitts and Nevis and it needs to meet the ordinary maintenance requirements as any ordinary company would. Now, let's compare it to Antigua and Barbuda. For the real estate option, Antigua and Barbuda actually offers a lower investment threshold when it comes to real estate. You can invest as little as 300,000 US dollars in an approved real estate development project. You can either buy a unit or a share, and as I mentioned earlier, this is usually tourism initiatives such as hotels. But the other good thing about Antigua and Barbuda is that you only need to hold the property during 5 years in order to qualify to resell it. And you can still keep your citizenship and renew it. Another perk is that during the time that you own this property, you can actually lease or rent it. And furthermore, if you want to do a joint investment, each main applicant would have to still invest 300,000 US dollars, but this is definitely possible if you want to apply for citizenship. So in St. Kitts, you can become a benefactor in an approved public benefit project. You can invest as little as 250,000 US dollars, and the project must involve some sort of public capacity building or technology transfer. But you need to keep in mind that this is under the condition that you maximize local employment and you assume all the financial risks that come with this investment. Now, Antigua and Barbuda allows you to do a direct purchase of an existing eligible business within its country. The thing that you need to take into consideration, though, is the minimum investment amount. So if you're a single investor, you would need to invest 1.5 million US dollars, whereas if you do a joint investment, this needs to add up to $5 million with no party investing less than 400,000 US dollars. So of course, if you are an entrepreneur and you wish to conduct business in a specific industry within Antigua and Barbuda, this can be an option that you can consider, but it is definitely not for everybody. Moving on to our third category, we're going to compare qualifying dependents. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, whether you apply as a single applicant or you apply with your family, the investment amounts are going to be quite similar. So you need to take into consideration which dependents and which family members you can actually include and would qualify to obtain citizenship by investment with you. So for St. Kitts and Nevis, you can, of course, add your spouse, not a common law partner, and if you, for example, get divorced in the future, your spouse would be able to keep the citizenship. Now, when it comes to children, they have become a little bit more restrictive. You can include all your children below the age of 18, but if they are between 18 and 25, they need to be fully dependent on you. And this includes they cannot have a part-time job, they cannot live on a different household as yours, they need to be fully financially dependent. The same applies to your parents. You can include your parents in your application, of course, but they need to be above 65 years old and they need to be fully dependent on you. This includes both living in the same household as you and not receiving income from any other source than the income that you provide them with. This includes, of course, a pension. And trust me, they check everything. Lastly, and of course, if you have, for example, children who are maybe physically or mentally more dependent or have some sort of disability, you can also include them as long as you can prove that this is the case for them. Now, to conclude on St. Kitts and Nevis, your dependents and your parents cannot be partially dependent on you. They need to be fully supported by you, both in terms of income and household. Now, if you don't include your parents originally as part of your application, you cannot add them later. So say, for example, that when you apply, your parents don't meet the age requirements and therefore you cannot include them. Well, if you have already been approved for citizenship by investment, you cannot unfortunately add them later on, even if they now meet the requirements. The good news, though, is that once you get citizenship, if, for example, you have another child, they can get the citizenship by descent. You do not need to make any additional donation, but you would need to apply through the National Security Office. Now, when it comes to qualifying dependents, Antigua also takes the lead, and you will see why. Of course, you can add your spouse. But when it comes to children, you can add dependent children up to 30 years of age. Now, when I say dependent children, it doesn't mean that they need to be fully dependent on you or that they need to live with you. This is not the case for Antigua. When it comes to parents, they can be as young as 55 years of age and they can qualify as your dependents as well. Furthermore, you can add your siblings and the spouses of your children. Of course, you can also add mentally challenged dependents, but overall, the range of possibility of dependents that you can add into your Antigua citizenship by investment application is a lot wider. Now, when it comes to adding new dependents, even if you've already have your citizenship approved, there's no time limit as to when you can add an additional dependent. You can, for example, add a new spouse of your dependent children or even a child of your dependent children. So grandchildren are welcome, so long as your original dependents are not older than 35 years of age. Last but not least on our list, we're going to compare the interview requirements. Now, this interview is sort of like a new addition to the due diligence process, and it is conducted by an approved government official, whether virtually or at an approved location. And on this category, I have to give the point to St. Kitts and Nevis. This is because, in theory, all main applicants should be or could be eventually called to conduct an interview, and even dependents above 16 years old. However, in practice, this has not been implemented. For example, none of our clients who are doing the due diligence for St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship by investment have been actually called out to conduct an interview. This is not the case, however, with Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda has implemented the mandatory interview for each application, and it comes at a fee of $1,500 per application. Now, the main applicant, of course, needs to be there, and all the other qualifying dependents should also be present at the time of the interview, even if they're not going to speak directly. But all applicants above 16 years old could eventually be called to answer a question or two. Interviews are usually conducted in English, but if it is not your main language, the Citizenship by Investment unit will provide you with all of the facilities to conduct the interview in your native language. Now, for this epic immigration battle, we chose these 5 aspects, but there are a lot of details and a lot of key considerations to take if you want to go for a Caribbean citizenship by investment. Both countries have very thorough due diligence processes. But to reach some sort of conclusion, the best program would really depend on what your priorities are. You can choose St. Kitts and Nevis if what you prioritize is a citizenship that will last longer and that will not require you to, for example, visit the country. So choose St. Kitts and Nevis if what you prioritize is a longer standing passport, again, 10 years, that doesn't require you to visit the island in order to renew it, and it is suitable to you if your qualifying dependents are below the age of 25 and fully dependent on you. Or you can choose Antigua and Barbuda if you don't mind renewing your passport every 5 years, and if you have plans for example, a great vacation in the country, and you are also willing to undergo a mandatory interview. Now, in terms of costs and investment amounts, there are many other costs that come with this sort of application that we would need to add up in order to determine the total cost of your investment. So it is definitely much higher allocated budget. Here at Nomad Capitalist, we have over 10 years of experience helping hundreds of clients obtain second residence and second citizenship solutions. We have all the knowledge and expertise to help you achieve your final result that you're looking for. And we work with the most highly qualified professionals and vendors in-ground. So sign up to become our Nomad Capitalist client today so we can help you go where you're treated best.